Wow, good to be back. Marriage conversation 13.0. Woo! It's good to be here. Good to be here. Good to be here. Yep. Yep. Good evening. Marriage conversation is back. Tell someone to tell someone. Marriage conversation with Olaiwola Abiola is back. We've been off line, or shall I say, okay, not offline per se. We've not had my conversation the last 2 weeks since the last time we had pornography in marriage, April or that was the last edition we've had. And I needed to take the a very vital break. I'm glad I'm back now, and I'm glad to be bringing this edition to you. And we're looking at something very, very important, something very, very interesting, especially in these days and time. There's no other time to talk about this but now. So I look forward to an engaging conversation with you guys out there. So tell someone that Marriage Conversation 13.0 has started. Welcome. So I look forward to you guys joining me for this conversation as we get into the core of the matter tonight. Welcome, guys. I can see Ibironke Abiola, my wife. Afebu Christopher, I see you. Kachi Live, I see you. Welcome on board to Marriage Conversation 13.0. Today we'll be looking at something very, very important, something very serious. Praise and glory. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining. I'm excited to have you guys around. Tell someone to tell someone that Marriage Conversation 13.0 has started. After 2 weeks of break, and we are back. I'm fresh and full of life. Um, I'm glad. Ooh. Tell someone to tell someone we are here. Since the last time we met, because this is one of the things I do on a day-to-day basis, talking to couples, to single intending couples or married couples, and helping them to navigate through their issues, either in the premarital or postmarital counseling session. And I've always discovered that one of the major issues that we can't run away from is the mental state of the person you are getting married to. Now, whether you like it or not, marriage is an experience. So when you get married, you are not just marrying a person, you are marrying an experience. You are marrying an experience. You are marrying the realities and the essence of that person. So if the person is up and doing mentally, then it impacts on your life as a partner or as a spouse. And if the person is also having issues, probably from their upbringing, from their childhood, or due to life stressors and life realities, and they are not handling it well, you also taste in that reality. So to say, every partner is the first beneficiary or victim of the state of mind and state of health, either physical health or mental health of their spouse in marriage. And that is why it's important that we look at this particular critical topic today, depression. Now, in our country today, a lot of things are happening and people are going through a lot. A lot of us are there, hanging in there to just keep life going. And but the fact of the matter is that not everybody is really finding it easy or funny in being able to manage life stressors and life realities. And you can imagine those that already have underlying health issues. You can imagine how this will be impacting on them. So, but all hope is not lost. Help is available, and that's why we're having this kind of event to let you know that help is available. You can seek help even within this country, within this state. There are professionals like myself that have been trained to help people deal with mental health issues. And if there's need to refer you to other medical experts, then there'll be need to. But the major reason why people like us, psychotherapists, mental health counselors, therapists, are here is to make sure that we help you deal with these issues before they get escalate or get out of hand, so that you can manage them properly. And if you manage them properly, you may not need to go see maybe a psychiatrist or a medical doctor in that regard. But whatever the case, whether you need to see a medical doctor, whether you need to see a psychiatrist, the most important thing is for you to get the best out of the treatment that may be available. But before we get to that, let's look at this matter critically. So let me just say one or two things here from you guys. How are you doing? Can you please say one or two things? Let me know you can hear me. I hope you can hear me. Catchy Life, can you hear me? Afebo Christopher, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Let me know if you can hear me. Okay. I hope you guys can hear me. If you can hear me, please just send me a chat. Let me know if you can hear me. Okay, good. Good, you can hear me. Thank you, Ibironke, for letting me know that you can hear me. Now, because of time, while we wait for other friends and as many other people that will be joining us, I'm also mindful of time, and because I have a lot to share with us tonight in the light of this important topic, so I don't want to take much of the time. I believe that others will join us as we go on. Okay, so today we are looking at something very interesting: depression, and how it affects marriage. The fact of the matter is, once any of the of a married couple, if once any of them, I would say, God forbid, yes, God forbid that two of you have to be depressed at the same time. No, that's a disaster, a recipe for serious matter. Now, once one of you is depressed or having some level of mental challenges, it's important to know that it's going to impact on the other party and also on the marriage, and even on the children in most times. So it's important that we look at this issue critically. Now, it is important to let you know that um, depression is the leading cause of disability in the world. There's been a lot of research finding to this. When I say disability, it's not talking about physical disability in terms of maybe somebody that is disabled, in that physically challenged. What this is saying is that anything that does not allow you to be able to function optimally, that affects your optimal functionality. So that means you've been. So that's what this is saying. Depression has been found to be the leading cause of disability in the world. In fact, in the United States, they have a lot of data. It has been found that close to 10% of adults struggle with depression, right from about 18 years old and above. Close to 10%. And you see, but we also need to clarify this, that most of the time people say, I'm depressed, I'm depressed. There's a difference between having depression and feeling depressed. Why? Because we all feel down from time to time. Life life happens. And whether you are aware of it or not, we are all part of it, especially for those of us from this part of the world in Nigeria, Lagos State, for example. A lot of life stressors, a lot of stress, traffic condition alone is so. Somebody has lost his job, or probably a woman that lost a baby, maybe due to miscarriage. So at times, we go through things that are not so palatable and they are not so convenient. And so what happens? We may feel down, sad, moody. Maybe you've been in a relationship for a very long period of time, and for one reason or the other, the relationship didn't work out. So while you're expecting the guy to propose, what really happened was that he came and said he's no longer interested. So life happens. So most of the time, what happened to people, these triggers, where there are triggers that bring about mood swings, mood changes. You are not happy, you are down, your landlord is at your door knocking, asking for for the payment of your rent. Your children's school fees have not yet been paid. So things happen. But when these things like this happen, once you are able to meet those needs and be able to, if somebody has spoken to you some promises here and there, or just thought about it, or maybe you have a very fantastic spouse that just rub your back and say, sweetheart, don't worry, things will work out fine. And life goes on. You may feel, but most people call this depression. So we are fond of using this word. if you allow me to say carelessly. So, but when we talk about clinical depression, it is different. It's a mental disorder. This is a medical condition. And just like when people have diabetes, they have a high blood pressure, a medical condition that you have to deal with. This depression we're talking about here is a medical condition. Now, you may have all those symptoms that I said earlier on, not happy, moody, and things like that. But when it comes to depression that we're talking about, all these different symptoms, I'm going to show you about 10 or 12 symptoms, must have lingered for a minimum of 2 weeks, consecutively for 2 weeks, and must have significantly interfere with your ability to walk, your ability to play, and your ability to love. That is, this mood thing, feeling bad, feeling whatever, must have affected you, your ability to walk, to play, to love. And let me give you some of these things, these symptoms. Number one, low mood, mood disorder, changes in appetite, loss of interest in things you normally enjoy. Now, when people get to a point where the things they normally enjoy, they've lost zest and zeal for life, feeling worthless or excessively guilty. You start looking down yourself. You feel worthless, as if you don't matter in the scheme of things, and also leading to things like sleeping either too much or too little, poor concentration, restlessness, slowness, loss of energy, loss, as I said earlier on, loss of zest, loss of energy, loss of passion for life, recurrent thought of suicide ideation. And when you have minimum of five, at least five of these symptoms that I've just listed consecutively for 2 weeks, then according to psychiatric guidelines, you are qualified for a diagnosis of depression. So that is very, very important to establish at this point in time. So, so for the fact that you are moody, maybe because something happened, your boss lashed out at you at work, you are not happy, you didn't get the money you were expecting, and you are feeling so moody, and it's happened maybe for about 1 or 2 days, or maybe somebody that you love passed on, or you receive a bad news. We humans do have emotions. We are emotional beings. We are also relational beings. So at times those things happen to us, and when it happens, the first thing that happens to us is that it affects our mood. And after 2 or 3 days, or at times even few hours, you are out of that mood. So you can't call that depression. That's just simply you are sorrowful, you are sad, you are not happy. But when it comes to clinical depression, what this means is that about 5 out of the 10 or 12 symptoms that I highlighted earlier on must have persisted for nothing less than 2 weeks. You know, and this is not just a thing because of a trigger. Fine, there could be a trigger, but this is a medical condition. Now, the issue now is what exactly causes or what are the causes of depression? Now, it's important to know that neuroscientists still don't have a complete picture of what causes depression, even though there are things that there's also some ideas that have been been promulgated, some ideas that have been put up that may be responsible. For example, it is believed that it seems to do with some complex interaction between genes and environment. Also, some chemical release in the brain. The abnormal transmission or depletion of certain neurotransmitters, like especially like serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. There are some hormones when they are either or hormonal abnormalities, uh, like high secretion of cortisol, deregulation of thyroid hormones. I don't want to bore you with all these technical jargons. What this is trying to say, let me say it in a very layman term, is that when there are brain chemicals, because first of all, you want to look at factors that contribute to mental health issues. Generally, depression being one of those mental health issues. And one of the things I think I've shared with us some time before now are biological factors, such as genes or brain chemistry. Now, there's also been this talk that can depression be hereditary, even though the study of the genetics of depression the research is still ongoing, but it's important to establish here that it has been found that depression run through families. So there are families that have this this recurring pattern of people having depression. So there's to an extent there's an belief or a thinking ideal or an ideology, an idea that is possible, that is hereditary. But beyond that, the environment also plays a lot of role in bringing about what's it called depression. So, first and foremost, brain chemistry, excess secretion of some hormones in the brain can cause that, neurotransmitters and things like that. And at the same time, life stressors. It has been found that stress is one of the major drivers or risk factors, causativity factors of depression. Why? Because when you are stressed, stress releases cortisol into your bloodstream. And when cortisol is in your bloodstream and too much of it, it brings about a lot of health challenges. And one of the major things that it also brings about is depression. And we also have people that have family history of mental health problems that could predispose them to depression. Also, the upbringing. These are basic causes or factors for general mental health issues. Upbringing and parenting styles. Some people have been raised in an environment where they are not given the opportunity to express themselves. And when that happens, they develop a kind of lifestyle where they bottle up things. They keep bottle up things, they bottle up things until the things get out of hand and affect them emotionally, psychologically, and otherwise. So it is important to establish that these things are causative factor or risk factors to depression. Genes or brain chemistry, life stressors, economic situation. People are under a lot of economic stress, psychological stress, environmental stress, and this can bring about depression. Because, for example, we've seen someone that has gone through a lot in the little days of his lifetime, a lot of financial pressure, a lot of no family, no support, nothing. Business is not going fine. Inflation rate is crazy. There are loan to pay, and there's so much stress and pain. And because all these bring about stress, it releases some very toxic hormone into our system that will encourage and empower depression. And as I also said earlier, could be gene, brain chemistry, where some people by virtue of their genetical makeup. So these are the things that can bring about depression. But for me, it's not about what causes depression. It's about the fact that being able to go through all this and find solution in the midst of all the major issues that we are going through. The fact of the matter is that in our country alone, for example, look at these insecurity issues. Listening to news in Nigeria alone can be very, very disheartening. And that's why a lot of time we must learn to manage our fears and even the kind of things we allow to get into us. So we are not just looking at depression only. So the question now that we are looking at tonight is how exactly does depression affect marriage? Because as I said earlier on, whether we want to agree with it or not, it's a fact of life. Marriage is an experience. So when you get married, whatever the person brings to the table or you bring to the table are the things you experience. Now, if this is not the end of life, but the fact of the matter is that whatever affects any one of the member of a relationship, it will affect the other party. So depression indeed affects marriage. Okay, so let's look at ways depression affects marriage. Because if you look at the symptoms, those things that I share, for example, about 10 things or so that I shared earlier on about those symptoms, if you have minimum of 5 of them and it persists for at least 2 weeks consecutively, 2 consecutive weeks, then you can say you qualify for a diagnostic process of depression, like low mood, changes in appetite. For example, low mood. How does this affect marriage? Marriage is a place where two come together to share their lives together. Now, if one of the parties is always having a terrible mood, not talking, sad, sulking, and things like that. Definitely to impact on the other party because it brings an atmosphere. Every one of us are energy in motion. You are dissipating a form of one form of energy or the other. So some just enter into a place, they radiate a lot of joy, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of zest, a lot of, you know. But some, can I imagine being in your own home, your own space, with someone that is always down, with low moods, and this persists for over 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. Can you imagine how it impacts on the other party? The other party start like, doesn't mean this person is happy to be with me or what's happening. For example, changes in appetite. Your wife has taken out time to prepare your favorite meal and you are coming back, you are not eating. Loss of interest in things you normally enjoy. Maybe you normally go out once in a week for your date night to go see a movie, and suddenly your spouse is no longer interested. It can affect you. So, and if you are not sure or you are not aware that the person is having depression, maybe it has never happened to them before. For example, maybe he has lost a loved one, maybe a parent or a friend, and it affects him so much. And care has not been taken, maybe due to that relation or due to other underlying issues. Maybe work is not going fine, finances is low, and this person also be like a support system to him just died. This can trigger depression in your spouse. So, what am I trying to say? Look at these symptoms: feeling worthless or excessively guilty. Maybe he's having erectile dysfunction, finances is low, so many life stressors here and there, you know. And the funny thing is that each time we allow this shame of I'm not good enough, one of the things that happen to us is that it shut down the learning center of our brain that make up for growth, that make up for evolution, that make up for solution to issues. So each time we're in that state of looking down at ourselves and worthless, state of shame, it does not only affect you physically, it actually affects you neurologically, affect you in your brain because it shut down the aspect of your brain that is needed for 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 growth, that is needed to bring about solution. So when that happens, we are in a very terrible state. Another symptom is sleeping either too much or too little. You are married and your husband is not sleeping or your wife is not sleeping. That can lead to other health complications. So it's a big issue. And what also happens is that this person feel worthless, no longer interested, just no zest for life. Now, a lot of slack is going to happen in that marriage because marriage takes two to tango. For example, you have children to look after, you have finances to take care of, you have bills to pay, you have family, extended family issues to deal with, and there you have your spouse that is down and out and is not interested in anything as far as life is concerned. What happens is that it imparts on the other party. It imparts on the other party, and the other party will have to take up the responsibility of the two of you. And what happened? That can also lead to resentment, anger, and irritation. And when that begins to take place, the other party also begin to seek for solace or support outside of the marriage. That can make the other party emotionally vulnerable. And before you know it, what started out as someone having bad mood, loss of zest of life, low interest in anything, poor concentration, either sleeping too much or not sleeping at all, or sleeping too little, predisposes your partner to seeking emotion, because we all have emotional needs. The unmet needs and expectation in that relationship can push that other party out there to seek that same thing, the gap that has been created. Because now when somebody is in low mood, communication will be affected. When communication is affected, what happened? At the end of the day, the very foundation of that relationship is shaken. Wow, I'm seeing my people. Sound Mind Therapy, thank you for coming. Bumi, Dotomi, Alabi, I appreciate your coming. Okay, Ola Soji, Cornerstone, EB, thank you for joining. I appreciate. Thank you for joining me tonight. So we've been looking at depression and how it affects marriage. So I've looked at depression, what depression is, the causes of depression. Now I'm looking at how depression affects marriage. So the other party is left with picking up the slack and the non-functioning of the depressed spouse, especially if there are children to cater for, as I rightly said the other time. So over time, exhaustion and frustration will set in, which may lead to anger and resentment, since the relationship has turned one-sided. Because at this point in time, a lot of people don't even get to know that this is depression. At times they feel maybe, especially if they've always had one issue or the other party may be thinking maybe, is it thinking of leaving this marriage, or is it because of other things? So if nothing is done and they didn't get to seek help or seek counsel, what happened is that the the other partner, the emotional, mental need, sexual need, physical needs will not be met. And at the end of the day, irritation and isolation will set in. Okay? Now, let me also show you some other things that set in, how depression affects marriage. And that is why it's important to talk about this today. In my day to day interaction with people in my private practice, some of these things do come to the table, to the fore. For example, depression will sap life and an excitement out of any marriage. Because the other party that is depressed, for example, slowness, loss of energy, restlessness, feeling worthless or excessively guilty, this person has lost interest in life. This person is feeling, look, I'm not good enough. If another one is recurrent thought of suicidal or recurrent thought of suicide, that's suicidal ideation. So you have a partner that is thinking of ending it. So what happens? This saps life out of that relationship. It saps excitement out of that relationship. Probably used to, when he comes back home, is highly exciting person, very interesting person, is jovial, full of humor. But now, because of what he or she is going through, the person no longer humorous. And at the end of the day, what happened? Life is drained out of that relationship. Even the children will know. So what's happening to daddy? Or what's happening to mommy? And if the other party happen not to understand this thing and begin to look for ways to help him, even be taking it against the other party as if, look, this person, I don't know what's wrong with him. What's happening now? Because just ask the person, what happened now? What's the problem? It may not be enough to get the person to talk. You know, may not be enough to get the person to talk. And by so doing, you may think that this person is not communicating with me because already he has lost interest in the things normally that will interest him. Changes in appetite. It's not eating your food anymore. Let's say the man has probably has not been doing well financially, and you manage to cook the meal with your own money, and you wonder what's the kind of man is this? After all I've done, after all this thing, and blah 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 blah, because you are not even aware that this guy is already on the pathway of depression. Another thing is it brings exhaustion on the part of the other party, as I said earlier on, because you have to cut it. It's not he has forgotten to pick your children from school because he has lost interest in life. And such a person that is also suicidal, eventually when you come to realize that maybe the person now is self-harming him or herself, you're always scared. If you're in your office, you'll be afraid that he's not going to do anything stupid at home. So exhaustion, frustration, it brings about isolation. So a time will come because it takes two to tango. There's no your lover boy or your lover girl that you always want to chat with, watch movie with, go out. It's not interested in all these things. So it leads to isolation. And when it leads to isolation, some people that do not know how to manage it well, they seek help and solace. Interestingly, most of the time, as we talked about infidelity the other time, people at times are not really that commit infidelity, do not really plan to commit infidelity. At times, it's a result of unmet expectation, unmet emotional need, sexual need, mental need from their partner. When your partner is not there to engage you, you are going through some issue in your place of work, you need somebody to talk to be able to encourage you. Okay, do this, do this. And this person himself is down and out. It leads to isolation. Now, let's say one day the spouse, the one that is depressed, now want to commit suicide, and people now caught him while he was committing, or in fact, maybe has already taken maybe a harmful substance, and help me, then rushed him or her to the hospital. Another way depression affect marriage, it brings about stigmatization. From that day on, people begin to look, is that another man that want to kill himself? That's the wife of the man that wanted to kill himself. People in this part of the world, everywhere in the world, stigmatization, that you have someone that have a mental health challenge, it can bring about stigmatization. And when stigmatization comes, it can be very, very heavy on the part of the other partner that is not depressed. And if care is not taken, it can even lead to the other partner being depressed. Okay? Another one is grief. When I say grief, what do I mean? Because grief is the natural response to loss. Now, the other partner that is not depressed can enter into grief. a bout of grief. Do you know why? Because they're what they call anticipated grief. You know, because this other party, you are not even sure. Maybe he has tried to kill himself one or two or three times, or because he has lost interest in everything that normally he normally enjoys before. He's feeling worthless and excessively, he's not even in tune with life anymore. So the other party will begin to feel, have I not lost this relationship? Your brain tells you, have I not lost this man? Have I not lost this marriage? And it can bring about grief. In fact, even when we talk about grief, most of the time it's not just about the loss of life, of somebody that died. If something is so important to you and you've lost that thing, you can grieve about it. For example, you lost your job, you were robbed at gunpoint, your valuables were taken away from you, you will grieve. And the 7 stages of grief that people go through: shock, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, is one of the depression happen to be one of the stages of grief. So depression can affect marriage by bringing grief on the other party that is not depressed, in the light of the overwhelming situation that he or she have to go through all alone. Because marriage is supposed to be number one support system, and when that party is not there and you have to do everything all by yourself, and especially for people that do not know that help is available, what happens? It can bring a lot of grief. It also creates distance between couples. Intimacy will be affected, because the person that is depressed, he will have this attitude. A depressed person will often give this impression of, I don't care. So someone that have an attitude of, I don't care, sex is the least thing in his mind, in his or her mind. And sex has its own role in relationship. Sex is a bonding factor in a relationship, because each time you have sex and there's orgasm, and there's a release of oxytocin into the bloodstream of the man and the woman that have engaged in sexual relationship. Oxytocin creates a bonding effect between the man and his wife. Some research said, the particular research said, that bonding effect after ejaculation takes place, orgasm takes place, lasts 2 days in men and 14 days in women. And that's why men need more sex, because men need sex to function. So the orgasm that's brought a bonding effect with his wife today, according to research, lasts only 2 days. So that's why at times out of sex is out of bond. And that's why a lot of sexless marriages also lead to other complications in marriage. So now, by depression, this man does not have interest in life, does not have interest in anything, everything has been, maybe it's a man that your wife has been complaining, you want sex too much. Now this man does not even want sex at all. The woman is wondering, is he getting it outside? And when that happens, I don't care. So it affects the intimacy level in a relationship. Okay, so because it is hard to feel intimate with someone who look at issues as if I don't care. Somebody that's, I'm tired. I don't care. So how can you be intimate with such a person? So it's important to look at those. So those are some of the effects that depression brings about in marriage. It eventually can lead to infidelity, because when emotional needs are not being met, interaction, communication needs not met, eventually the other party that may not be aware that his or her spouse is going through depression may eventually begin to seek solace somewhere else. And at times, unplanned, one thing leads to the other, and infidelity comes into the picture. So the whole essence of doing this tonight is to bring to the fore and bring our attention to these things, that it is important we look into them and take the necessary steps. So how do we address or manage depression? And I want to look at it from two angles. Number one, from the angle of the depressed and from the angle of the spouse. How do we? Okay, Babson, I can see you. Thank you for coming. Bumi.Tumi Alabi, enjoying this class, and thank you so much for that comment. I want you to drop your questions and your comment also as we look into this together. It's marriage conversation. So please, maybe you have a practical life experience or anything. It's marriage conversation. Just drop. Let's rub minds together. So I'll be looking out for your comment. I'll be looking out for your questions and also your contributions in the light of what we are looking at tonight. Depression and how it affects marriage. Okay, so how do we manage or how do we address this matter. Let's look at first of all from the angle of the depressed, the person that is depressed. How do you handle? How do you manage it? Number one, I would like to say here that there is no um, a magic pill or silver bullet that will take care of depression, like something that is that's universal to everybody. What works for one person may not work for another person. Okay, so what works for one person, excuse me, please, what works for one person may not work for another person in the light of what we're looking at. So, but I just want to put this forward for someone that is going through depression. What are the things that you can do? It has been found that both medication and therapy are, are things that can be used to help people going through depression. Okay, there's a study conducted by Italian researchers that found out that both couple therapy and individual therapy have similar outcome on depression or the symptoms of depression. However, couple therapy has proven to better reduce what's it called, depression in the person that is depressed, and also bring about reduce relationship distress. And this is not is a no-brainer to this, in the sense that since both of you are going, the other party that's not depressed will have a better understanding of what is happening to the person depressed and be able to deal with the issue and deal with the matter. So it is important that we look at it. Going for therapy has been found to be useful, either as an individual person or as a couple. It has been found to be useful, that therapy and medication has also been found to be useful. So because depression can either be mild or it can be either be mild, severe, or there are three levels of it. So depending, or chronic. If it's chronic, such a person will probably need the attention of a psychiatrist that will need to do proper evaluation and be able to give the person the necessary medication and prescription. So, but for where I stand and for where I practice as a talk therapist, and one of the major things that I do is to help people with talk therapy. Now, with talk therapy, we get to go into the root of the matter, and has been found also to be very, very effective. So now, but first thing first, if you are depressed, those symptoms that I've said earlier on, let me go through them again. A low mood, changes in appetite, loss of interest in the things that you normally enjoy, feeling of worthlessness and excessively guilty, sleeping either too much or too little, poor concentration, restlessness, slowness, loss of energy, recurrent thought of suicide, that's suicidal ideation. If at least minimum of 5 out of these symptoms have persisted in you for 2 weeks consecutively, then you need to pay attention. You really need to pay attention. So number one thing for someone that is depressed, that I will encourage the person to do right away, is to seek professional help. That's what I do. I'm a certified mental health counselor with a specialization in relationship and marriage counseling. So before I specialized in marriage, I was first of all trained and certified as a general mental health counselor. Okay, so seek professional help. Then another thing I also want to say to somebody that is depressed, there's need to be open, to be emotionally genuine and authentic to those that are close to you. Talk to your wife, talk to your husband, talk to your parent. If there are things you are going through that is affecting you, that is boggling your mind, I will encourage you to open up. I will encourage you to open up. You see, speaking up is one major way to start your healing process. It's very, very important. Very, very important. So if you are going to come out of depression and be the best version of yourself, you must learn to be authentic and be genuine. Open up. To be vulnerable in this kind of situation is one of the lifesaver for you. You need to open up either to your parents, for those who are not married, and if you are married, you need to come to a point. You need to come to a point that you can talk to your spouse and say, "Look, this is what is happening. I need help." So open up And it has also been found regular exercise. I'm talking about someone that is depressed. Now, these are the low hanging fruits, things that you can do, you can pick up to do by yourself. Regular exercise has been clinically proven to be effective for treating mild to moderate depression as antidepressant. One of the medications that they will give somebody going through depression, as prescribed by the psychiatrist or by the medical doctor, will be antidepressants. But it has been found, in fact, clinically proven, that regular exercise for someone that is depressed, that have passed all those symptoms that I've said. I'm not just talking about somebody having a bad day or a low mood for one day or a few hours. I'm talking about somebody that have minimum of 5 of those symptoms that I talked about earlier on. Such a person can start. These are low hanging fruits. Regular exercise. Regular exercise can help. Another thing is keeping a mood journal. Getting your thought on paper can be very, very effective and help you, because when you get a journal, what they call a journal. I remember those days when you were growing up in secondary school days, you always do what they call old diary, hello diary, that you pick up your diary and you just note things that happened to you during that day. Now, for somebody that is going through depression, one of the low-hanging fruit you can lash on and do is keeping your mood journal, getting your thought on paper, write it down. I feel sad now. I'm not happy. No, just keep a mood journal. Another one is keep a gratitude journal. Keep track of the things to be grateful for. Because most of the time when people are depressed, in the light of what they are going through, there are 3 major things going on in the head of that person. No matter what the issues are, you can put them under 3 things. Number 1, I'm not good enough. So you want to start looking at good side of your life. I'm not good enough. If that thought persists in your head in during those episodes of depression, these are the things that drive people towards committing suicide. So keep a gratitude journal. Look into your life. What are the things that you can be grateful for? Take note of them. Gratitude journal. Another thing that is going on at the end of that person is that everybody, the world is against me. Maybe because you've lost your job, your fiancé broke up with you, someone close to you died, and you're just looking, it's like, is it only me? The world is against me. So keep a gratitude journal. What are the other things, good things that are in your life? If you take out time to think, because one of the things that bring about depression is what also called irrational thinking. There's a particular therapy that we call REBT, rational emotive behavioral therapy, believes that human beings have the capacity of both rational and irrational thoughts. And it has also been found that to a very large extent, 85 to 90% of our thoughts on a daily basis are negative or irrational thoughts. And we have capacity for both rational and irrational thoughts. But the major part of our thoughts, of our thinking, are always negative. So you want to practice things like mindfulness, being able to capture or take charge of your thoughts at the moment. You see, most of the time people compare why people have this a lot of thought, rational about thought that we have. We pay more attention to our past or to our future. You look at your very regrettable past and you look at the future that looks so bleak. So the only thing we refuse to do is to consider the present. So one of the things you can do is mindfulness, and that's why keeping a mood journal and a gratitude journal will help, because it will encourage you to be mindful. Mindfulness, that is, block out the thought about the future, because the thought thing that's going on in the head of somebody depressed also, the future is bleak. They begin to judge their future in the light of their present or their past days realities. I don't have money now, so the future is bleak. I don't see myself having money. I'm not good enough. The world is against me. Everyone is against me, and the future is bleak. So when they entertain all these thoughts, irrational thoughts, what happens is that it drives them towards suicidal ideation. It shuts down their mood. Their appetite goes south. They are not in any good mood. They feel out of touch with life. The zest and the zeal for life is out. And if care is not taken, the next that will happen will be self-harm. They self-harm themselves or probably commit suicide. So you want to keep gratitude journal. You want to keep track of the things to be grateful for. That will help. I'm talking to the person that is depressed now. We're going to talk to the spouse in a few minutes. So I'm still waiting for your contributions, guys. I hope you are still hearing me. I hope I'm online. You are hearing me? Please let me know if you can hear me. Okay, now another thing you can do is to take right step, talk to the right people. I'm one of them that you can talk to. Olaiwola Abiola is my name. I'm a certified general mental health counselor with specialization in relationship and marriage. So I can also help you to manage how it has affected or is affecting your marriage. At times, the issues people are going through in marriage is also what is bringing about depression, because these things are interrelated. Depression will affect marriage. Marriage can bring about depression. So these are interrelated. So these are the things I think people need to look into. Now, when we now look into how the person that is married to a depressed person, what are you supposed to do in this situation? How do you manage a situation where your spouse is depressed? You know, one of the things I want to say is that you must learn the signs and symptoms of depression. Education is key. You want to both do research. You want to sit down with your spouse that is depressed, and you want to both research into this thing. You know, you need to be sensitive to how you approach the subject, because if you don't approach it well, if you appear to be judgmental, opinionated, the depressed spouse may feel, in fact, that he has even lost the last person, the last man standing, that feels too close to them. It may also increase the tendency of their depression. So you want to be sensitive on how you approach it. You want to support them by seeking to know about depression, learning the signs and symptoms, getting educated about it. This is one of the things I do. You can give me a call, you can DM me, and we can talk and sit down together, clarify what these issues are and what they are not. Then you need to acknowledge and talk about the depression. You have to, as I told you earlier on, especially to the person depressed, you have to be open, you have to be authentic, you have to be genuine, you have to open up. When you say, how are you doing? I'm fine. Are you sure? I'm okay. And whereas a lot of things are going on in the head of this person. So you want to sit down, you want to talk about this. Communication, open communication, brutal, honest communication with your spouse is encouraged at this point in time. Then you have to be there to the spouse or the caregiver to person depressed. Be there without being opinionated or being judgmental, as I said earlier. Encourage them to seek professional help or opinion. You can get my number and give to them. You can Google people that can support them. Seek help for them as a spouse to somebody depressed. Support them by seeking professional help. Offer to help them to find a good professional. Book an appointment for them. Then follow them to that place. I told you earlier on that from a research finding in Italy, researchers in Italy discovered that when somebody is depressed and goes for what's it called, therapy, individual therapy, it will help. But they discovered that when it's couple therapy, you go together with the person depressed as a spouse to that person depressed, it brings another aspect to it. It brings about relieving of relational distress, because you now understand it better. Other underlying issue in your relationship also that you may not even know will come to the fore, that may be fueling or may be supporting that depression, will come to the table and be able to resolve all this. Okay. So talking about depression is important. It's very, very important. So, and encourage them to seek professional help. They encourage any form of regular exercise. I told you earlier on, to the depressed, seeking, going for regular exercise. So, as their spouse, you want to encourage them to engage in regular exercises. So you can even go out with them. Let's take a walk. Let's take a jog. So as you are doing it together with them, you are providing the necessary support system. Then another thing you can do as a caregiver or as a support system or as a spouse to somebody depressed is to help them to simplify their lives both at work and at home. Because earlier on I told you that stress has been discovered to be one of the biggest drivers of depression. Stress. Because stress, we increase the cortisol level, the secretion of cortisol, a toxic hormone, into your system. Other hormones that are even positive hormones, but because one of the things that brings depression, as I said earlier on, is brain chemistry. Maybe excessive secretion of a particular one, like serotonin, norepinephrine. There's one that this jaw-breaking name, norepinephrine, and dopamine. No, when they are too much or too little, and there's a way they stabilize the neural activities in the brain. Now, when people undergo too much of stress brings about high level of cortisol in the system that brings about depression. So one of the things you want to do for a depressed spouse as a caregiver to them is to help them to simplify their lives by helping them to look into their work and their day-to-day activities. Okay? I talked about journal the other time. So as a spouse, you want to encourage them to do what? To take advantage of the journal, keeping their journal, you know. And by so doing, I said earlier on, learn about the condition together, because knowledge is power and validation is a great healer. A united front is crucial. Very, very important. Now, you can't help them without this other thing I want to say as I begin to tidy this up. Compassion, empathy, and understanding are vital, very vital. Compassion, empathy, and understanding. But you must also understand that you can't help your depressed spouse alone. So take them out for to see a professional counselor, a therapist. I'm one of them. I can help, I can support you to go through this. I hope these few points help. Okay. So very, very important that we look into all these things. Very, very, very important. So, friends, I hope I've been able to help somebody tonight. And I look forward to hearing from you. So I want to hear from you. Are there questions or contributions you want to give to us tonight under this marriage, this 13.0 marriage conversation, 13.0 marriage and depression, or depression and how it affects marriage? I would like to hear from you now. Do you have questions that you want to ask? Okay, let me look at some some questions here. Okay, okay. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, are you there? Can you let me know if you can hear me, please? Can you hear me? Hello, I want to hear you from you. It's marriage conversation. Don't let me do it alone. Do you have a question or you have a contribution? Okay. Does depression cause problem in a marriage, or do problems in a marriage cause depression? Does depression cause problems in a marriage, or do problems in a marriage cause depression? True. Does depression cause problem in marriage? True. Yes. I said it earlier on that one of the effects or how depression affect marriage is that it can bring about isolation, can bring about irritation, frustration, exhaustion. It saps life out of the marriage. It takes out life and excitement out of marriage. It can lead to infidelity. It can create a distance between couple if they do not handle it well. Because if one person is depressed and is out of in touch with life, out of sync with life, anything that interested him before is no longer interesting him, is dropping the ball, is slack. You can imagine your spouse forgetting to pick up your children in school because he has just lost interest in life. Definitely it affects marriage. And the other part that says, do problems in a marriage cause depression? Sure, true. Problems in marriage do bring depression, because I said earlier on, one of the things that I've seen as causative factor, for depression has happened to be life stressors, life trauma, life abuses. For example, you can imagine a woman that is in a relationship that is abusive, a domestic abusive relationship, or a sexless marriage, and the woman is so strict, and or the man, it can be either ways, punishing the partner by not offering sex, by not allowing sex to happen. Or a man that is economically abusing the wife, won't give her money, won't take care of her, will not take care of the children, and is sleeping around. And so all those issues can bring infidelity. A woman just caught her husband in bed with a friend, for example. So these are problems in marriage, underlying problems in marriage that can trigger depression. Even people that do not have underlying genetic or brain chemical issues. So anything that is a life stressor, whether it's a marriage or outside marriage, will encourage depression. And that is very, very important to note. Okay, I don't know if I've been able to answer your question. So, very, very important. Okay, I don't know whether I can still take another. Okay, another question. Let me look at this. Those private DMs. Let me see this. Okay, this is talking about the issue of medication and talk therapy. Okay, maybe this. Okay, how can it help? Well, as I said earlier on, there's no one size fits all, depending on the level of depression that the depressed is. For example, as I said, there's mild, there's severe, and there's chronic. There's mild, moderate, severe depression. The severe, we also call it chronic depression. So there was a study published in the Journal of the Consulting and Clinical Psychology, Stanford University. There was this study that was published. Researchers compared medication alone talk therapy alone, and combination of the two, of talk therapy and medication, in 656 patients with chronic depression. Mind the word chronic depression. And this is what they are finding. They concluded that the combination produces a faster, fuller remission of chronic depression. This was a study carried out in Stanford University by the consulting and clinical psychology. So, what are they trying to say? For chronic depression, there will be need to merge both talk therapy and medication. So, but for those that are going through mild or moderate depression, that is why it is important that you present early enough to talk about it with people like me, talk therapist, mental health counselor, marriage counselor, so that they can help you to put issues you are going through in proper perspective. Okay? So I hope that answers your question. I'm looking at my time because it's 9 o'clock already. I do not intend to take more than 1 hour anymore because we've always take more time. And one of the things I thought about in the last 2 weeks that we didn't have this conversation was to look into our timing. So I want to take this opportunity to appreciate as many of us that have joined me tonight on Married Conversation. Thank you so much for being part. You are indeed the bomb, honestly speaking. I want to appreciate Babson, 025, Bumi, Tomi Alabi, Sound Mind Therapy, Okeola Soji, Kona Soji, Mago Counseling, Damasius, Afebu Christopher, Ibironke, Kachi Live, and as many people that I can't even call. I want to say thank you so much for being part and for the questions that we're also sending through the DM chat. I want to say thank you for those questions. I just hope I've been able to help someone or help a couple tonight. It is important for us to know that there's an understanding we must have about depression or about life stressors generally. We may not be able to live without them, life reality. There are some things we do not have control over. But it is important for us to know that we can come to a point where they do not control our life. They do not become a controlling beast, a taskmaster, a hard-driven taskmaster that will drive our life to a state of chronic depression. Help is available. Your marriage can be salvaged. You can be the needed support for your spouse. You do not need to allow that marriage to crumble on the basis of depression. Come out, be open, seek help. Help is available, and at the end of the day, you and your spouse will be better off for it. So, on this note, I want to say thank you once again for as many of you that have joined me tonight for the Marriage Conversation 13.0 edition. I hope I've been able to help someone tonight, and I look forward to joining you again for another interesting edition next week, Friday by 8 p.m. From me, I want to say thank you for coming. God bless you. Bye.